Hello friends, welcome to EduTap. In this video, we'll be discussing about economic survey and union budget. If you can hear me, if the audio is clear and the video is clear, please give me a thumbs up in the comment section. This is a very important session, my friends, because in ESI descriptive component of RBI Grade B examination, we expect there to be a good number of questions which have some linkage back to the economic survey and the union budget. Therefore, we must be able to have an analytical understanding, a descriptive understanding of this component. It is very important to understand what we are not going to discuss as a part of this session. See, the thing is that this is not going to be like, an objective kind of a session in which we are going to solve MCQs with you. This is not going to be a session in which we are going to provide you copious objective details which can be very helpful in answering the objective kind of questions. Those kind of videos have already been provided to you by Ritika ma'am, and they are available on EduTap's YouTube channel itself, right? In this video, what we are going to do is that we are going to try and understand 6 types of questions that can be asked to us. There can be many core questions that can be asked to us, of course, but as a part of this session, we are going to take up 6 questions and we are going to try and answer those questions as well. We are going to discuss the fodder material that can be helpful in answering those questions. Through those 6 questions, what I am going to try and discuss with you is that we have to be able to answer these kind of questions. We have to be prepared for these kind of questions in the upcoming examination. That is what we are going to do in this session. So let us begin. Do join EduTap's YouTube channel. If you have not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, do subscribe to our YouTube channel and also join our Telegram channel. All the free videos that we are providing to you through our YouTube channel, study notes and material for those videos are being provided through our Telegram channel. So both these Telegram channel as well as YouTube channel, something you should join, something that you should subscribe to. This is EduTap's Hall of Fame. This is something that we have really worked very hard about, right? We have been able to produce consistent results in RBI Grade B, NABARD Gr A as well as SEBI Grade A. Right, so we would like to see your result also, your name also in this Hall of Fame. For that, we are dedicatedly working. For that, we are putting everything that we can to provide you the best material, and we expect the same from you, that you work very, very hard so that we can fulfill your dream of clearing the examination. Right, in this year's NABARD result, out of 69 seats, 65 seats have been filled by those aspirants who were preparing using the EduTap platform. That is something that we are very, very proud about. That is something that we really cherish. Let us move ahead. I would like to tell you, friends, that there are courses related to RBI, NABARD, SEBI, EPFO examinations. These courses are available also in the combo format if you are appearing for more than one examination. So in a very, very competitive way, you can approach a course which is a combo course. So keep this in mind while enrolling in our courses. Let us move ahead. First question that I would like to place in front of you is here, right? Union Budget 2021-2022 has been released. A question can come saying critically analyze Union Budget 2021-2022 from the gender perspective. Straightforward question, right? Something that you can very well expect. Why? Because this is associated with 2 chapters of your syllabus. If you look at the syllabus that they have presented to you, so they say that, priorities and recommendations of economic survey and union budget, that is one chapter in your syllabus, and the other chapter in social issues is gender issues. Right, and another chapter through which we can sort of appreciate this question as well is that of public finance, right? So this question is basically having some relevance across all these chapters that I have just mentioned, which are a part of your syllabus, right? So this is a very, very important question. I remember very clearly having spoken about gender budgeting at various forums, right? And this question is also related to that. Now what we have to do is that we have to take up our objective understanding of Union Budget 2021-2022 and we have to be able to answer this question, right? We should know that, okay, what are the steps which have been taken in the union budget so far as women in India or so far as girls in India are concerned. What steps should have been taken but have not been taken. This is the kind of information that we should possess and that we should be able to analyze and present in the exam as an answer. Now the data that I'm going to share with you, I have ignored the word limit because I want to really explain to you what is happening. Whatever you have to write in the exam, you have to write within the word limits. Therefore, you will be expected to compress the information that I am providing to you. So let us begin our discussion. The first point that you should discuss is regarding the budgetary allocation. That means how much amount of money has been set aside in the gender budget. So gender budget stands at approximately 153,326 crore for the coming financial year, right? So if you can remember this number, approximately 1.50 lakh crore is something that you can easily remember, right? So that is the gender budget. Now this gender budget has fallen to 4.4% of total expenditure, right? It was 4.7% last year, and it was 4.9% the year before that. So consecutively, you can see that gender budget as a percentage, right, as a proportion of total expenditure has been declining from 4.9% to 4.7% to 4.4%. So if the government is really committed towards, women empowerment, towards gender budgeting, towards ensuring that women and girls in India are getting their fair share, right? This doesn't indicate that. Why? Because the gender budget as a proportion of total expenditure has been declining. So that is something that you need to keep in mind. Moving ahead, you should be able to point out that India is ranking 112th in World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Index. This kind of information should be available with you. You must have read EduTap's schemes document, indexes document. You should have read our magazine. So we discuss all these things as a part of that. So we are ranking 112th in World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Index. We have a very low female labor force participation rate, and despite these abysmal numbers, despite this pathetic state in India, we have no mention of women's issue under inclusive development and reinvigorating human capital, which are two of the 6 pillars in the budget. You should be able to know by now, you should be knowing by now that what are the 6 pillars of this budget. If you know, please type it out quickly in the comment section. I'll be very happy to see who knows the 6 pillars of this budget. Out of the 6 pillars, there are 2 pillars, inclusive development and reinvigorating human capital, and there is no mention of women's issues as a part of those 2 pillars. If we look at what is the speciality of budget 2021-2022, it is a strong push to digitization, which is a special feature of this budget, which stands out in this budget. In fact, even the finance minister, while presenting the budget for the first time, instead of using papers, instead of using reams and reams of paper, she was using a tablet, right? A red color piche wala tablet, right? So in budget 2021, we have given a strong push to digitization. But if you look at the 75th National Sample Survey data, you will see that insofar as operating a computer is concerned, insofar as being able to use the internet is concerned, insofar as owning mobile phones is concerned, women are far behind their male counterparts in India. That essentially means that even if a household is digitally connected, ladies in that household or girls in that household may not be as digitally connected, may not be as digitally empowered as they should be. Therefore, what this budget could have done or should have done was that probably it could have given out a free or a subsidized device to women so that they can be linked through the digital media. They can be linked, right? Or probably we could have given some kind of a public skilling program, which could have had an immediate positive impact upon digitization of women in India or digital empowerment of women in India. That is something which is clearly missing, right? That is something which should have been there. So that is something that we can talk about. Moving ahead, if you look at the Nirbhaya fund, which was created to augment safety related infrastructure, to augment safety related framework for women in India. If you look at the allocation towards this fund, it is a meager 10.4 crore versus 855 crore in budget estimate for the last year, right? So there is a dramatic drop. In fact, in the last year itself, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, though 855 crores approximately was earmarked, but that money was never spent. Why? Because there were other pressing issues that time. Therefore, this money which was earmarked for Nirbhaya fund was used for other purposes. And in this year also, we have not allocated much to Nirbhaya fund. There is no compensatory focus on funding interventions to address domestic issues. You may have read about this in newspaper that because of the lockdown, because of the pandemic induced lockdown, everybody was forced to go into their homes, right? And domestic violence, domestic abuse cases went up dramatically all across the world, including in India. Why? Because everybody is locked up, everybody is frustrated, there is stress, there is no escape, you cannot go anywhere, and therefore, domestic violence against women shot up all across the world. Probably we should have addressed that. Maybe we should have created more shelter homes. Maybe we should have created provisions for legal aid, but we have not done that. In fact, women helpline, one-stop center line items, these items show a significant reduction in the figures, and that is something which is really, really distressing, because if you look at from a gender perspective, these are very, very important. Initiatives which were taken by the government should have been continued by the government. We have eulogized our healthcare professionals. We have said that they are warriors. We have said that, they are, the backbone of the country in such a scenario. Despite all of that, and knowing that, the nursing profession is basically having a lot of women, right? So that could have sort of, we could have done something more for that sector. Health sector focus could have been a chance to underscore the role on job creation for women, but that was not done. Right, we have just introduced a National Nursing and Midwifery Commission bill to promote transparency, efficiency, and governance reforms in the nursing profession. But a lot more could have been done, given the fact that this is a sector in which predominantly women are employed. Probably we could have done something for this sector. Similar argument can be made for Ashas, Anganwadi, auxiliary nurse, midwife workers, that is ANM workers, who are going to play a very, very critical role so far as India's vaccination drive is concerned. They are being paid a very, very low minimum wage. We could have probably done something for them by increasing their wages, by recognizing the good work that they have done, by recognizing the risks that they have taken, and that would have gone a long way in saluting these corona warriors in the true sense in which it really makes, a difference in anybody's life, right? This budget has spoken thankfully about the textile industry, which is a very important employment generator in India. We are talking about mega investment textile parks. Now, how is this linked with gender? So the fact is that a lot of women are sort of employed in the textile industry at various stages of our production. So therefore, if the textile industry gets a boost, not only through through these mega investment textile parks, but also through the production linked incentive scheme. Textile has been made a part of the PLI scheme as well. So if the textile industry gets a boost, if it gets a fillip, if it's able to do well, if it can generate more jobs, then there is a great probability that even women in India will have greater employment opportunities, which is all very good. But the fact of the matter is that we need to ensure targeted skilling and apprenticeship opportunities for women. We have to provide reliable child care facilities for women in textile industry. We have to work so far as the safety aspect is concerned, fair pay, parental leave, flexible hours aspects is concerned. A lot could have been done on these fronts. Much has not been done, right? A positive move is the labor code, right, where women are entitled to all kinds of work, including in the night shift. But like I mentioned above, so far as skilling is concerned, so far as child care is concerned, fair pay is concerned, and other aspects within these industries itself is concerned, something more needs to be done going ahead so that we can improve our performances on various indices related to women empowerment, gender empowerment is concerned, right? This budget has rightly prioritized the issue of air pollution, but it does not highlight the problem of indoor air pollution. You may have surely read somewhere that cooking with a conventional traditional old-fashioned chula is like smoking, I don't know what, hundreds or thousands of BDs per hour or something like that. So you know that indoor air pollution is a very big problem in India. And government has rightly launched the Ujjwala scheme. They have provided LPG gas cylinders all across India. So they have done that, but the usage of LPG by households still remains very low, still remains very limited. So something could have been done more about this, which is something which is lacking in the budget. There is a massive boost in the budget to urban public transport, which is very good, because if urban public transport gets a boost, then women will be able to travel safely. They'll be able to commute and reach to their workplaces, right? So that is a very good step. Hopefully that should be done in a gender sensitive manner. The entire infrastructure design, the entire process, the entire framework, the entire last mile connectivity should be done keeping the idea of women commuting safely, girls commuting safely in mind, right? Another very, very important and a very good development that has been done in this budget is the spotlight that has been projected on universal water supply under the Jal Jeevan mission. So not only do we have a Jal Jeevan mission for rural areas, but we are also having a Jal Jeevan mission now for urban areas, which is all very good. Why? Because majority of the times you will see that it is either the girl or the woman in the house who is given this task of going and fetching water from far off places. So if these missions become successful, if they can ensure household water supply through, let us say, piped water supply, then a lot of time will be saved, a lot of effort will be saved, and that time and effort can be diverted towards more productive activities such as maybe skilling or maybe education or maybe recreation or maybe anything that that girl child or that woman would like to do, right? Swasth Bharat has gotten a lot of focus, which is again very good. Proper waste management and clean air in urban centers has gotten a lot of attention, which is again very good. But aspects like public toilets have been excluded, and if you have ever visited a slum in a city, you would see that public toilets is a very important requirement. Public washrooms, I would say, is a very important requirement for the well-being, hygiene and dignity related to women. So about that we could have done something, but yeah, there are certain positives that we need to highlight, there are certain negatives that we need to highlight, and I have highlighted all of that in front of you, right? The allocation for vaccination drive is also linked to the gender perspective, and of course India has allocated a good amount of money towards the vaccination drive, which is very good, which is very required. The positive impact of this upon women in India is that if the vaccination drive is successfully rolled out, and if you are able to vaccinate the country, if you are able to immunize people and everything gets back to normal, so all the contact based services in which women are employed, for example, let us say related to your beauty parlors and all hospitality services, predominantly where women are employed. So these services which have gotten a gotten a very negative kind of an impact because of the pandemic, these services can probably come back on track if everything goes back to normal through the vaccination drive. So if the vaccination drive is successful, that will be very helpful for women in India to come back to normal so far as their jobs is concerned in these contact based service sectors, right? So this is something that I would like to present to you. So again, as I said to you at the start of this discussion, that this entire discussion that I am providing to you will be helping you in answering these questions well. This is not an exact answer. Please do not consider this to be an exact answer. Please be kind enough to create your own exact answers by shortening the content that we have provided to you over here, by introducing some kind of an introduction, by introducing some kind of a conclusion. That is what you need to do. So I hope that this is very clear, right? I am seeing a lot of good participation by you in the comment section. Just Thought, Venkat Ram, as well as John Wick, right? I welcome all of you. I hope that this is very clear. If this question is clear, if your understanding of the provisions of union budget from the gender perspective is clear, please give a thumbs up in the comment section. That will be very helpful, right? So let us move ahead towards the next question. The next question that I would like to present to you is infrastructure spending a panacea for all ills? Of course, in your examination, you may receive a more fleshed out question. You may receive a question with a different wording, but the spirit of the question is simply asking you this, that in the present budget, in Union Budget 2021-2022, Government of India has apparently earmarked a lot of money for infrastructure creation, right? Is that a panacea for all ills facing the Indian economy? Because you know that Indian economy is going through a COVID-19 pandemic induced slowdown. A large section of this of our economy has faced this problem of, they losing their jobs. People have lost their jobs, people have lost their sources of income, right? Many people have probably been pushed below the poverty line again because of the impact of the pandemic, right? A lot of sectors are ailing in the economy, like for example your small and micro enterprises. If demonetization was not enough, if GST implementation was not enough, then probably lockdown may have surely broken the back of many of these small and micro enterprises in India, right? Now the fact of the matter is that we have to be able to sort of help these people out. We have to be able to sort of help these sectors out, right? So is infrastructure spending, which is like, being shown as, a great step that the government has taken at this point of time, is it considered to be a panacea for all ills, a solution for all ills? We have to discuss about this, right? So you have to be able to give the positives as well as the negative. You have to obviously say that infrastructure is a core requirement of any economy. It is the backbone of any economy, right? If we ever want to undertake the process of growth and development, it cannot be done without infrastructure. I'm sure that you may be knowing all the positive points, like for example, infrastructure spending can create a multiplier effect. Infrastructure spending can create more jobs. Infrastructure spending can create the infrastructure which is required to support higher levels of growth. So I'm sure that you know the positive points, right? I'm going to highlight certain shortcomings of infrastructure spending in front of you. right? So the idea is that union budget, right, has made a definitive turn to the right. What is the meaning of this? Please understand. Okay, in economics there is a right wing and there is a left wing, right? And it has got nothing to do with religion, it has got nothing to do with BJP or Congress. This is across the world. Okay, that in any discipline there are right wing scholars and there are left wing scholars, right? So left wing scholars are always in favor of giving out some kind of direct help to those who are needy, to those who are poor, to those who are vulnerable. You can understand it in that manner. And then there is a right wing who is not so much in favor of giving out direct assistance to those who are poorer, right? They probably believe in overall development of the economy such that everybody can help themselves out, right? Very broadly speaking, very generically speaking, this is something that you can sort of assume regarding what the left wing economists may want or what the right wing economists may want, right? This is very generic, right? So now in our 2021-2022 union budget, we have not given much direct benefit transfer, or we have not given direct help to any population in India, to any vulnerable section in India. Rather, we have focused heavily on investment in infrastructure to bring the Indian economy out of the recession. That is what we have tried to do, right? So now the idea is that there is no doubt, like I said, that you have to be able to point out the positives of infrastructure spending. That there is no doubt that high quality public infrastructure will be helpful to promote economic growth, to generate jobs, to improve the well-being of the citizens. There is no doubt about that, right? But the fact of the matter also is that, we have provided funds for national highway projects, right? Especially in those states which are going to be having elections very soon, right? So your Assam, Kerala, Tamil Nadu and West Bengal all appear very prominently as a part of the budget, and it is not a matter of coincidence that these states are going to be having an election very soon going ahead, right? So poll bound states have gotten a lot of infrastructure project funding, there is no denying that, right? Can infrastructure spending give an immediate boost, right? Is infrastructure spending which happens immediately, like for example PM Kisan means that 6,000 rupees is given immediately. Direct benefit transfer to accounts of poor women in India means that money has been given to them immediately, so they can immediately use it for their needs, they can immediately spend it to take care of their most critical needs, and through their spending, which will be done probably immediately, the economy will get an immediate booster, right? That is the meaning of the term immediate over here. Now infrastructure spending does it give an immediate boost? No. Why? Because the nature of infrastructure investment is complex, and I'm not saying that infrastructure investment is not constructive or it is not required. That is not what I'm saying. So please do not misinterpret what I'm trying to say. All I'm trying to say is that infrastructure investment is much needed. We have to do it, but it is complex. It takes time. Projects may not really, come out in the open on the right time, maybe because land acquisition is stuck, maybe because there is a court case, maybe because environmental clearance has not been attained at the right time. So the point is that yes, it has a multiplier effect. Infrastructure spending will give a boost to steel sector, to cement sector, to all kinds of workers will be required, so all that is really good. But the point is that all this multiplier effect may be actually be felt in the longer term only, maybe after a couple of months or maybe after a few quarters, when these projects actually start getting implemented in reality. Probably we will realize the impact of these projects going down the line. So is the boost that is required for the economy, is it available today or is it available in the future? So through infrastructure spending, it is believed that the boost will come, but it will come in the future, right? So we require a boost for the economy probably today. Support was required probably today and not so much in the future, is one of the arguments that you can present, right? It takes a few quarters, maybe a few years to actually implement, right? Because planning has to take place, permission has to take place, permits have to be taken, acquisition has to be done, right? So the point is that it may take some time, it may take some quarters for the infrastructure spending to really have its effect, right? Most importantly, infrastructure spending does not provide support to those who are most affected by COVID-19 pandemic directly. So if I am the poorest of the poor, or if I am a small and micro enterprise, and if I have lost my customer base, or if I have lost my business activity for any number of reasons, right? How do I get direct help from, let us say, a highway which is getting constructed in West Bengal or Assam or Kerala or Tamil Nadu? I really don't get that kind of help. So it would have been probably much better if you could have targeted help, or you could have targeted assistance towards the most vulnerable section of society. Infrastructure typically targets heavy construction industry, like I mentioned, steel and cement and so on, engineering and so on and so forth, right? Now those who are the ones who are most impacted, right? The most impacted ones are the ones who are exporting, the ones in tourism industry, the ones who are running MSMEs, right? And not these industries, your steels and cements and all these plants, they will be able to come back on track, or they have already come back on track. Who have not come back on track? It is these guys who have not come back on track, and probably the government could have done more towards targeting help and assistance towards this sector. As I mentioned, that if I am sitting in one part of the country and the infrastructure spending is happening in a totally different part of the country, how is it that it's going to help me? I really don't know. So infrastructure spending is highly localized, right? We are not at all sure that if one part of the country, if infrastructure gets created, how does it help those who are extremely vulnerable in another part of the country? That is something which infrastructure spending cannot ensure. And even if we talk about what is the amount of money that we are going to spend towards infrastructure creation, it is not much. It is around rupees 1.77 lakh crore of additional economic stimulus, which is just 0.8% of GDP. Right? So these numbers have been presented to you. So if you look at the overall picture, right? Even if you look at the overall picture, right? How much amount of money is being spent towards infrastructure? It is not so huge that it should be considered that, okay, we have taken such a huge step ahead that it will take care of all the problems in the country. That is something that will not happen via infrastructure spending without I'm not denying that yes, this is important, but we are trying to understand that, okay, what are the shortcomings of this infrastructure spending? Infrastructure spending can also result in the problem of NPS. Why? Because if you create an infrastructure where it is not really required economically, and it is not feasible, it is not practical, it is not viable, right? It doesn't generate any user fees, then who is going to pay for that creation of infrastructure? Let us say that you create a road between X and Y, but there are no vehicles flying on X and Y, or if the toll collection between X and Y is not sufficient to pay back the cost incurred in creating that infrastructure, that basically means that whoever has spent money on creation of that infrastructure probably will have a non-performing asset on their balance sheet. So that is another problem associated with the infrastructure, this thing, that we don't really know that what may be the future of this infrastructure project, which doesn't mean that it need not be created. But like I said to you, that we are focusing upon pole bound states. Is that infrastructure which is getting created really the best need of the hour? Right now we don't know that. That is the kind of problem that these sectors have. So you can conclude by saying that yes, we have given a strong infrastructure push, no doubt about that, but there are various sectors like education and health which could have received more attention. There are various vulnerable sections of society who could have received more attention. There are various sectors of the economy, particularly your SMEs, who could have received more attention. Things should have been more timely, well targeted, and towards inclusive growth. Can infrastructure do this? Only time will tell. Immediately we do not know whether infrastructure will be a panacea for all ills. This may sound a little negative to you, but you do not have to be only positive, because if you are being only positive, then you're not really giving the right picture, you're not painting the right scenario. I've said it once, twice, thrice, and I'm going to say it again, that yes, national infrastructure pipeline, 102 lakh crores that we want to spend over 5 years for creation of infrastructure is an absolute must. There is no denying that. But to believe that that kind of money or that kind of spending will have an immediate ameliorative impact upon various sections and sectors of the economy, that is not going to happen, and you should be able to justify why that is not going to happen. That is what I have tried to do through the discussion that I have provided to you over here. So I hope that the second question is very, very clear to you, and if everything is clear to you, I again request you that you can share your doubts, you can share your views with me over here in the comment section, and if everything is understood, you can give a thumbs up in the comment section. I hope that this is very clear to you. Right? So let us move ahead to the third question that I would like to discuss with you. Again related to union budget, right? So in the union budget, certain important financial sector reforms have been announced. Can you please tell me what those reforms are? I'm requesting all of you who all are viewing this session, right? Pandu as well as Venkat as well as Just Thought as well as John Wick as well as all others who are participating in this live session. Can you all tell me what are the major reforms which have been unveiled in Union Budget 2021-2022 pertaining to the financial sector? At least 3 reforms you should be able to tell me that have been announced, right? So I request all of you that please give it a shot. आप लोग मुझे बताने की कोशिश करिए. Obviously I'm going to tell you and I'm going to discuss everything with you. Once this third question is discussed, I'll move to economic survey and I'll discuss 3 questions from economic survey also. As a part of our course, what EduTap has done is that we have provided a very detailed document to you covering various aspects of union budget and economic survey from a descriptive angle, right? So that document will help you to develop a very clear, a thorough understanding of the Indian economy, and you will be able to answer a good number of questions in the examination using the fodder material that we have provided as a part of our course. So if you have not already enrolled in our courses, it would be my earnest request that do consider enrolling in our courses, right? So Milson Frames, you are saying recap of banks. I'm again asking this question, that what are the major reforms that have been announced so far as the financial sector is concerned in Union Budget 2021-2022. राइट सो ओके वर्षा रानी कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर की बात नहीं हम कर रहे हैं, वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट फाइनेंशियल सेक्टर रिफॉर्म्स. सो लेट मी मूव अहेड, लेट मी टेल यू, राइट? So important financial sector proposals have been announced as a part of this budget by the Honorable Finance Minister Madam Nirmala Sitharaman, and many of these suggestions are pretty bold. First suggestion is privatization of banks. Second suggestion is establishment of a dedicated financial infrastructure financial institution, and the third proposal is establishment of something of the nature of a bad bank, right? So these are the 3 major reform proposals, or these are the 3 major proposals which have been announced so far as the financial sector is concerned. So you have to be able to correctly identify the various proposals. And of course, if you talk about the major reforms related to financial sector, you should have been able to identify these 3 major reforms. But it's okay, even if you have not been able to identify, now if you can understand, that will also be very helpful, right? For the first part, we are going to talk about privatization of 2 public sector banks. Government has said that it wants to privatize 2 public sector banks, right? And this is a very, very bold move. This is a very, very significant move, because for the government to come out openly and say that we are going to privatize 2 public sector banks, that is a very big deal. Please try and understand why. Okay, you understand, you may be knowing the meaning of disinvestment. Disinvestment means government selling stakes in, let us say, state owned enterprises. Let us say I'm government of India and I'm selling maybe 5%, 10% stake in some state owned enterprise. Maybe it is an ONGC, maybe it is a SAIL, maybe it is a BHEL, maybe it's a GAIL. I'm selling 5-10%. So if I'm a 100% owner of a state owned enterprise and I'm selling 5% of it, 10% of it, still that means what? That I am the predominant shareholder and that company is still a public sector company. So even if I sell, let us say 25% of my stake in a state owned enterprise, still that enterprise will remain a public sector enterprise. Why? Because the government is the majority shareholder in that enterprise. The moment we say that we are going to privatize 2 public sector banks, government essentially is trying to say that government will no longer remain the majority shareholder in these 2 public sector banks. And that is a very huge kind of announcement. Why? Because then these banks will be owned by, let us say, a private individual or private corporate, right? And therefore there is a very great possibility that these banks will undergo tremendous reforms. Staff will be reformed, processes will be reformed, technology will be reformed, products will be reformed, approach will be reformed, ideology may be reformed, vision and mission may be reformed, काम करने के तरीके में there may be reform. Probably you may see a start of creation of another HDFC bank, or a start of creation of another Kotak Mahindra bank, or a start of creation of another ICICI bank, which are absolutely stalwart banks in the banking industry. industry in India. They are the most fabulous wealth creators that we have seen in our country so far as the financial space is concerned, right? So the fact that the government is saying that it wants to privatize two public sector banks, that is a very, very, very huge kind of a deal that we need to sort of highlight in the examination. It has more than a symbolic value. It is an acknowledgement that government does not have the resources to keep recapitalizing public sector banks. If government is owner of these public sector banks, then it is the duty of the government to keep giving in more capital so that these entities can keep functioning. These entities are not making a huge profit, probably they're making a loss. These entities are having non-performing assets. They are not able to function in a viable manner, many of these entities. Therefore, government, in order to keep these entities alive, has to keep pumping in money, right? If we are throwing good money out after bad money, till what extent can we keep recapitalizing these banks? And therefore now finally the government is saying that we have merged a lot of banks. I would like to tell you that before Prime Minister Modi came along, we had 28 public sector banks. Today we have 12 public sector banks because many banks have been merged. There is a lot of consolidation which has happened in the sector, and by privatizing these two more banks, probably the number of public sector banks is being brought down so that जितनी बची उतनों को अच्छे ढंग से हम manage कर पाएं. This is a very bold move that the government is taking. Obviously government will have to bring in legislative amendments, government will have to go through the parliament, government will have to talk to the bank employee union, government will have to spend a lot of political capital in being actually able to take these reforms ahead. But if we are actually able to take these reforms ahead, we are actually able to privatize two public sector banks, that will be a very, very huge and a very, very phenomenal achievement. I would say, in my opinion, this would be like very, very good. It would be a very long lasting good step that the government can take. Another step that the government has spoken about, which is a questionable step, right, is the idea of how should we deal with this problem of bad loans, right? So government has said that they want to create an institution which is like a bad bank. So what is it exactly that the bad bank is going to do? It is going to be basically your asset reconstruction and management company, right? So let us say that I am the asset reconstruction and management company, and let us say that you are some bank and you have a lot of non-performing assets on your balance sheet. Right? What that basically means is that probably you have given 10,000 crore to XYZ people, and that 10,000 crore rupees is never going to come back, let us assume, right? So what we will do is that I will purchase that 10,000 crore ka non-performing asset from you. So probably I'll give you maybe 5,000 crores or maybe 6,000 crores, maybe 7,000 crores, maybe 3,000 crore. I may give you some XYZ amount of money and I will purchase that non-performing asset from you. So how will that help you? It will help you how? Because आपको एक तो 3-4-5-6 करोड़ रुपया मिल गया, right? That non-performing asset has been removed from your balance sheet. You have been able to recover 30, 40, 50% of the money that you had lent, and that non-performing asset is not a problem of yours anymore. And the money that I have given you, you can use that money to generate new credit. You can give new loans. You can support productive sectors of the economy. You can support productive individuals. You can do all the good activity that a bank should do. So the idea is that by selling your non-performing asset to an asset reconstruction and management company, you have said tata bye-bye to your problem of non-performing asset. Like that, this asset reconstruction and management company will purchase non-performing asset from the entire banking industry probably, right? So this asset reconstruction and management company will help the banks in clearing their balance sheet. The problem of non-performing assets is going to increase even as per the RBI's own estimation that by end of September 2021 the problem of NPA in India will rise. Why? Because of the कोविड-19 पैंडेमिक इंड्यूस्ड लॉकडाउन की वजह से जो स्लो डाउन आया है, जो रिसेशन आया है, उसकी वजह से वी आर गोइंग टू सी एन इंक्रीज इन नॉन परफॉर्मिंग एसेट्स. बट द क्वेश्चन इज दैट हु इज गोइंग टू फंड दिस बैंक, राइट? ये जो एसेट रिकंस्ट्रक्शन एंड मैनेजमेंट कंपनी को पैसा कौन देगा? भारत सरकार देगी या पैसा कहां से आएगा? सपोज कर लीजिए कि दिस एसेट रिकंस्ट्रक्शन एंड मैनेजमेंट कंपनी डिसाइड्स दैट इट वांट्स टू बाय non-performing assets worth 5 lakh crores, right? Where is that 5 lakh crore going to come from? Who has that 5 lakh crore? At what prices will the assets be purchased? like I said to you, that let us say that you are a bank and you have given away 10,000 crore rupees that is never going to come back, right? So what is the value of that asset on paper? 10,000 crore. So should you sell that asset to me at 3,000 crore? Should you sell that asset to me at 2,000 crore? Should you sell that asset to me at 7,000 crore? Who is going to decide the price at which the bad bank should buy this non-performing asset from, let us say, you? Who's going to decide that? Will the process be transparent, right? What happens if you have made an error? Let us say that you had made an error in giving the loan, you had made an error in estimating the credit worthiness of the borrower, right? So now your errors are also washed away, आपके सारे पाप धुल गए हैं just because I have taken the non-performing asset from you. Will you continue the same erroneous decision making process of deciding the credit worthiness of future borrowers? Because आपने past के अंदर you have made a mistake, you have identified wrong borrowers and given them money. Will you use that same erroneous decision making process and continue lending further? Why am I bothered about this? I am bothered about this because अभी आपने 10,000 करोड़ रुपीस बर्बाद करवा दिए, आगे चलते हुए शायद अगले 5 साल में वापस से 10,000 करोड़ रुपए बर्बाद करवा दोगे if you follow the same erroneous decision making process. So does establishing a bad bank help all banks follow good lending practices? Not at all. So how can we ensure that all banks are following good lending practices? So the idea of this bad bank as a solution to the problem of non-performing assets in the economy, that is not really a solution, because we are not having answers to many of these critical questions, especially the last one, that अगर आपने अपने सारे पाप धो दिए हैं by selling your non-performing asset to a bad bank, what is the guarantee that in the future you will be utilizing or you will be following good banking practices? That is a question that remains unaddressed. The third step that the government wants to take, which is again a good step but a questionable step because of the past, is establishment of a development financial institution so that we can fund long gestation infrastructure projects. Infrastructure projects are considered to be long gestation in nature, meaning that it takes time to build a highway from Mumbai to Delhi. It takes a lot of money to build that highway from Mumbai to Delhi. Let us assume 50,000 crore rupees. It takes a lot of time to collect 50,000 crore rupees in the form of toll from that project. It takes many years to collect that 50,000 crore rupees back, and then it takes time to collect interest on that 50,000 crore which was used for this period of time, and then it takes further a lot of time to generate some profit from that Mumbai to Delhi ka road, let us assume. So it's a long gestation project. A child is born in 9 months. A profitable infrastructure project is definitely not born in 9 months. Probably it may take 9 years. Probably it may even take 19 years. That is the meaning of long gestation infrastructure projects. Now, पैसा किधर से आएगा to fund this long gestation infrastructure projects? So far, your banks have been giving money to fund these long gestation infrastructure projects, but that is very problematic. Why? Because I may have given, let us assume that I have 2-3 crore rupees, right? So I have given a 2-3 crore rupees ka check to maybe State Bank of India in the form of a fixed deposit, let us assume for 5 years. That means that after 5 years, in all probability, I am going to come and ask the State Bank of India कि भाई मेरे को मेरा 2-3 करोड़ रुपया वापस से दे दो. So banks generate deposits in the form of saving deposits, recurring deposits and fixed deposits, and generally the maturity period of those deposits is 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, nothing more than that, right? And these infrastructure projects require money for 10 to 15 years at least, if not more. So if banks are providing money to infrastructure projects, that is problematic. Why? Because there is going to be an asset liability mismatch. Banks have to pay back their depositors after 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, but banks will not receive money from infrastructure projects up till at least 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. So there is an asset liability mismatch. तो बैंक पैसा लाएगी कहाँ से अपने कस्टमर को रीपे करने के लिए? That is why we cannot afford to finance the infrastructure projects through the banking mechanism, through the banks or public sector banks. So we need some alternative mechanism to arrange finance to fund infrastructure projects. That is something that is very clear, right? Government knows that we need an alternative mechanism, and the alternative mechanism that government has proposed is establishing a development financial institution. Right? So I have told to you that public sector bank led model of infrastructure financing is broken. Why? Because of the problem of asset liability mismatch. Public sector banks, first of all, do not have much money to lend. Second of all, they cannot lend because of the asset liability problem. Therefore, the government has decided to set up a development financial institution. But if you look at the economic history of India, earlier too we have established dedicated institutions for infrastructure financing, such as your ICICI and IDBI. Unfortunately, that did not work. Eventually, these institutions were converted into universal banks so that we could salvage some value, so that we could help these institutions grow and become profitable. IDBI is still not profitable. ICICI is doing well for itself so far. Scaling up this development finance institution is going to be challenging. There are going to be a lot of political considerations, and this is an acknowledgement that in India we do not have a deep and vibrant bond market which can be used to facilitate long-term infrastructure financing. You look at all across the developed world, you look at all across the emerging economies, wherever good infrastructure financing is available for a long-term basis, it is available through deep and vibrant bond market, which is not functioning in India, which is not available in India for various reasons. So infrastructure financing is important. National infrastructure pipeline requires money. Paisa kahan se aayega? That is the question that the government is trying to answer. And if the answer is development financial institution, then the past does not give any enthusiasm to me. Why? Because if ICICIs and IDBIs were tried in the past and they could not work in the past, what is it that we are going to do different now, so that probably 10 years down the line we will have a different picture in front of us? That is not very clear. So government needs to clarify as to how exactly this time the development financial institution that is going to be set up is going to be able to make an impact upon the economic infrastructure in India, and is going to be viable entity, and is going to be able to fulfill the mandate with which it has been established. That is something that we need to understand. That is something that we need to discuss, right? So I hope that this is very clear to you. Alexandre, you thought that this is about NBFCs. So this is a very technical topic that I have discussed. If you have understood all three questions that I have discussed with you, all those who are participating in this live chat, I request you to please share your comments, and those who are going to view this session later on, please feel free to write to us, to share your dilemmas and doubts with us, to share your feedbacks with us. That will help us in helping you understand things better, right? So all those who are participating, please be kind enough to share your views. So let us move ahead and talk about economic survey. Right now, I would like to highlight something very clearly over here, that although I've discussed three very important questions in my opinion from this budget, right, there are many more questions that we have covered as a part of our course, right? So please do not consider that this is the only thing that you need to study. You need to study some more, right? And that some more is available as a part of the course. Moving ahead with the same logic, right? Moving ahead, right? Analyze India's response to COVID-19 pandemic. Do you think that India has been successful in tackling the threat posed by COVID-19? अरविंद कुमार, आपने लिखा है हेलो, मेरे को भी आपको हेलो कहना है, राइट? चलिए, let us move ahead. Let us be a little civilized over here. Okay. Analyze India's response to COVID-19 pandemic. Do you think that India has been successful in tackling the threat posed by COVID-19? Now, I am going to answer this question through the material which has been provided in the economic survey. Economic survey is a government document. It is an important document, and everything that is discussed in the economic survey is very, very important, and we should know it, right? So let us see what the answer to this question is from the material presented in the economic survey. Have we been successful? That is something that we need to discuss. COVID-19 pandemic engendered a once-in-a-century global crisis, obviously, right? We have not seen this kind of a crisis in our lifetime. Our previous generation has not seen this kind of a crisis in their lifetime. That is why we are saying that it's a once-in-a-century global crisis, right? In this unprecedented uncertainty, right, India focused on saving lives. India's focus was on saving lives, and we were willing to undertake short-term pain for long-term gain. Exactly how? We imposed a very strict lockdown, right? When we imposed a very strict lockdown, what was the purpose of imposing a very strict lockdown? We wanted to ensure that the spread of virus is minimized right at the beginning of it, right? So that lockdown was a very costly lockdown. We lost out on economic activity. Indian economy entered into recession. People lost their jobs. But the idea was what? कि जान है तो जहान है, right? We are ready for short-term economic pain, right, for long term gain. And what is the long term gain? Probably we will be able to bounce back faster, probably lives will be saved, probably going ahead Indian economy will emerge stronger, right? We adopted a humane principle, right? We adopted a humane principle that while GDP growth can recover, even if the economic activity goes down, which it went down because of the lockdown, the GDP growth will recover. GDP will come back on track. But human lives, one lost, they will not be recovered, right? So we went with the humane principle that we want to save lives no matter what the cost is, right? Even if we look at medical research, that is epidemiological research, if you look at economic research, right, pertaining to the Spanish flu happened in the previous century, and it was something similar to COVID-19 in the sense that the pandemic was very, very strong and it was very deadly, very disastrous, and it had a very negative impact upon economy at that time. So all the research that was done on Spanish flu that indicated to us that intense lockdown is an important step as a first step. Why? Because it will give you a win-win strategy. It will not only save lives, right, but it will also help you in bringing about economic recovery faster in the short to medium term. So livelihoods will come back, lives will be saved, and India sort of implemented this kind of a program, right, to ensure that we are able to tackle the pandemic. So whatever steps we took, those steps were based upon solid evidence provided through various research that was done on Spanish flu, right? Our strategy was also guided by the research done by Nobel Prize winning Hansen and Sargent, where they have said that if you can minimize losses in a worst case scenario when uncertainty is very high, that is very good. You know that during the pandemic, the uncertainty was very high. Therefore, we wanted to minimize losses, and that is the step that we should have taken. Faced with an unprecedented pandemic where the uncertainty was very high, right, minimizing losses is the right thing to do, and that is what we did by minimizing the lives lost. Now, what is the evidence that India has been successful? The evidence is that we have been able to flatten the curve. We have not seen, touch wood, thankfully so far by now, a second wave of COVID-19 infections in India. Many countries in Europe, many countries across the world have seen a second wave of COVID-19. Their healthcare systems have been overwhelmed by the number of infections reported, right? But we have not seen. We have been able to flatten the curve, right? So there was a short-term trade-off. Yes, we lost livelihoods, but we saved lives, right? And which we believe that it was a win-win strategy, and we are still experiencing declining daily cases despite increasing mobility. That may be questioned going ahead. Going ahead, we may see a second wave. I hope we don't, but the evidence available so far suggests that India has been successful in tackling the threat. Is the threat completely gone? Not at all. We need to undertake vaccination very fast so that that threat can be completely done away with. But the fact of the matter is that yes, so far there has been a decline in the daily cases, right? If you look at the economic contraction, yes, economic contracted heavily in the first quarter of financial year 2021, right? But thereafter we have been able to witness a V-shaped recovery. So even after a very strong decline or a very strong contraction, we have been able to come back very fast on track, right, as indicated by various high frequency indicators, right? We have also been able to implement a lot of structural reforms to expand supply in the medium to long term, which will help us out. On the demand side, India was very cautious in not announcing, let us say, your Atmanirbhar Bharat program or a support package or a fiscal stimulus package very early on in the pandemic, because very early on in the pandemic India was under an intense lockdown. Production was absolutely closed in many factories. Therefore, announcing stimulus package at that time could have caused inflation to increase a lot, because if production is not happening and if people have a lot of money in their pockets, they'll spend that money immediately and probably the prices will shoot up because of low production. So India was very mindful, India was very careful, and we stepped on to the accelerator. We provided stimulus to the economy in a very slow, calibrated and a considered manner, right? So as the economy was opened up, as the economy was allowed to function normally, slowly and steadily the financial stimulus or the economic stimulus package was provided. Public investment program around national infrastructure pipeline was unveiled slowly and steadily such that demand can be pulled up so that production can be pulled up, right? The upturn in the economy has been good. We have been able to avoid a second wave of infection, and this makes India a unique case where we are able to probably recover fast, recover well, and even avoid a second wave of infections so far. That is the idea that economic survey wants to have us, wants to deliver to us. So if as per the economic survey you go, has India been successful in tackling the threat posed by COVID-19? The answer is a cautious, optimistic yes. So far, we have been successful in tackling the threat posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. I hope that this is very clear to you and you're understanding all of this, right? So miles and frames, you're saying that now we are on the second wave. We don't know that, right? So let us pray that that doesn't happen. And I have repeated the word so far 10 times so far. Why? Because that is what I'm trying to say, that this is an unfolding situation. It is an uncertain situation. But if you look at the track record of Diwali downwards, because everybody expected that during Diwali, with the unlocking happening and the festival season around, there should have been a spurt in the number of cases, but that did not happen. So Diwali downwards, we have been able to see that things are under control for 3 to 4 months. Economy has recovered. GST collection has gone up dramatically in these 3 to 4 months, which is why very cautiously we can say that there is some room for optimism, but the threat has not gone away. We need to undertake a proper immunization program, vaccination program all across the country for us to be able to breathe easily going ahead. That is something that we need to keep in mind. I hope that this is very clear to you. Now, another question that I would like to discuss with you, which has been inspired from what has been presented in the economic survey, is this. Discuss the desirability of using counter-cyclical fiscal policy to enable growth during economic downturns. So you should know what is the meaning of counter-cyclical fiscal policy, and is this kind of a fiscal policy desirable to use, should this policy be used to enable growth during economic downturns? That is the question that is being asked. Let me very quickly explain to you what is counter-cyclical fiscal policy all about. Assume that there is an aeroplane with 4 engines, okay? In an economy, there are 4 engines. So assume that in an aeroplane, there are 4 engines, right? In an economy, which are the 4 engines? The engine is consumer demand. The engine is demand. Another engine is demand created by businesses. The third engine is demand created by foreign buyers, and the fourth engine is your, okay, so which demand created by households, demand created by businesses, demand created by government, and demand created by foreign buyers. These are your 4 engines in an economy, right? These are the 4 sources of demand. If all these 4 sources of demand are working fine, that means good demand is getting created. That means that there will be production in the economy, there will be job creation in the economy, and everything will be good. But let us assume for any number of reasons, 3 engines of the economy are not functioning, right? Let us say that there is not much demand from households, there is not much demand from the business sector, and let us say there is not much demand from foreign buyers. In this kind of a scenario, what should be done? Now go back to the aeroplane. In an aeroplane, if 3 engines are not working, then it is the duty of the 4th engine to fire up so that, you know, we can avoid a crash, so that we can correct the trajectory. In an aeroplane, if three engines are working very fine, right, then probably we can allow the 4th engine to be idle because it may not be required, because हमारे को अर्थ के एटमॉस्फेयर में ही प्लेन उड़ाना है. ऐसा तो है नहीं कि अर्थ के एटमॉस्फेयर के बाहर जाके प्लेन उड़ाना है हमारे को. So we can probably switch off the 4th engine अगर 3 engine से काम चलने लग रहा है. What is it that I am trying to tell you? Is that in an economy, if 3 engines, consumer demand, business demand, foreign buyer demand is not there, then government should spend money. Government should create demand, right? So if the business cycle is down, right? What is the meaning of business cycle being down? Business cycle being down means ki there is not much demand in the economy from these sectors. At that point of time, government should increase the demand. Government should start spending more. And if the business cycle is doing well, that means that there is demand from 3 sectors, that households plus consumers plus businesses plus foreign buyers are creating good demand. At that point, government can afford to create lower demand government can afford to spend less, right? That is the meaning of counter cyclical fiscal policy. That अगर आपके 3 इंजन बराबर नहीं चल रहे हैं तो एक इंजन को फायर अप करना चाहिए, अगर आपके 3 इंजन बराबर चल रहे हैं तो आप एक इंजन को थोड़ा सा स्लो चला सकते हैं, थोड़ा सा धीमा कर सकते हैं. That is the meaning of counter cyclical fiscal policy. That if the demand in the economy is low, government should spend more. If the demand in the economy is high, government can afford to spend less, government should spend less. Because अगर ऐसे टाइम के ऊपर when the demand in the economy is already good, अगर गवर्नमेंट और ज्यादा खर्चा कर देती है तो शायद इन्फ्लेशन आ जाएगा, शायद प्रॉब्लम हो सकती है. Now the question is that is it desirable to use counter cyclical fiscal policy to enable growth during economic downturns? This is what we need to discuss. India is going through an economic downturn in the sense that because of the COVID-19 pandemic induced lockdown, India had entered technical recession, and yes, there is a slowdown, nobody can deny that. ऐसे slowdown से बाहर निकलने के लिए should we use counter cyclical fiscal policy? That is the question. I have explained the question to you. As per the survey believes that if there is growth in the economy, debt will be sustainable. So if the government of India takes on debt to finance economic activity, to pull the economy out of recession and to bring about growth, that is fine. So growth leads to debt sustainability in the Indian context. If you look at India's economic history, you will see that the IRGD, that is the interest rate growth rate differential, is negative. What this means is that interest rate is lower than growth rate. So therefore interest rate minus growth rate is a negative number. Let us say that the interest paid by government of India is 4% and let us say that the growth rate is 6%. So 4 minus 6 becomes minus 2. And for any economy, for any country which is having a negative IRGD, that is interest rate growth rate differential is negative, that means that debt is sustainable. Therefore, for a country like India, which can access finance at a reasonably low interest rate and can enjoy a high growth rate for a foreseeable future, the IRGD is going to remain negative. And if the IRGD is going to remain negative for the foreseeable future, then it makes sense for a country like India to take on more debt now and to spend its way out of trouble. So if government of India were to take on debt and were to undertake good spending, good infrastructure creation, good capital outlays, right, that would be considered to be very, very good. That would be considered very desirable. So I've told you about negative IRGD in India. Why? Because we have much higher growth rates. Therefore, fiscal policy can afford to spend money, government can afford to spend money during growth slowdowns and economic crisis. Growth will eventually cause the debt to become sustainable. How? When there will be higher growth rates, tax collection will go up, government's own revenues will go up, government's own receipts will go up, and when government's own receipts will go up, the economy will be able to repay the debt that it has taken on at an earlier stage. If you take on a debt and if you are able to use it well, you can make your country grow and you can repay the debt, you can consider the debt to be sustainable, and the survey points out very clearly that debt in India is sustainable. Now what has happened is that because of the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been a significant negative shock to demand. So we need an active fiscal policy, right, so that we can come out of this slowdown, right? So what the survey is trying to say is that fiscal policy can provide a stimulus to growth, right, and that will lead to lower debt to GDP ratios going ahead. So even if India were to take debt today, right, and increase the level of debt going ahead, our debt to GDP ratio will come down. Why? Because the GDP will grow. इंडिया का जब GDP ग्रो हो जाएगा तो ऑटोमेटिकली डेट टू GDP रेशियो विल अगेन कम बैक अंडर कंट्रोल, विल अगेन कम डाउन टू लोअर रिस्पेक्टेबल levels. Why? Because India has growth potential, India can grow, and debt sustainability is not going to be a problem even in the worst case scenarios. That is what the survey is saying, and therefore it is desirable to use a counter-cyclical fiscal policy to enable growth during economic lockdowns. There is also a counter argument which says that no, counter-cyclical fiscal policy must not be used. Maybe why? Because the government will undertake wasteful expenditure. Maybe the government may fritter away the money. Maybe the credit rating agencies may downgrade India's sovereign ratings because of taking on higher amounts of debt. But the survey outlines, the survey underlines that its policy recommendation is that counter-cyclical fiscal policy should be adopted. फिस्कल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी को ध्यान में रखते हुए, काउंटर साइक्लिकल फिस्कल पॉलिसी इज नॉट इक्वल्स टू फिस्कल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी. Survey is not saying that take any amount of debt and do whatever it wants to it. No, that is not what the survey is doing. Survey is saying that we must take on debt and use that debt in a strategic manner, in a wise manner, so that the Indian economy can be pulled sustainably out of this kind of a slowdown, out of this kind of a recession. And the survey provides some kind of an intellectual anchoring, some kind of a platform, so that India can actually go on to the path of adopting counter-cyclical fiscal policy. This is the argument presented in the survey for adoption of counter-cyclical fiscal policy. I hope that this argument is very clear to you, right? So if this is very clear to you, right, I hope that everything is fine. If there are any doubts, you can ask your doubts in the comment section. Moving ahead to the last question that I would like to discuss with you, and again a very important question, and again a technically challenging question. Previous question was also a little technically challenging because you have to understand counter-cyclical fiscal policy, you have to understand interest rate growth rate differential, right? And this question is also a little technically challenging, right? We are going to talk about regulatory forbearance. Please understand what is the meaning of regulatory forbearance first. See, the idea is that the Reserve Bank of India has told banks in India that you need to, you need to sort of, have some kind of forbearance towards, those who have taken money from you. So let us say that you are a bank and I have taken money from you, right? I had taken money, let us say I had taken 10 lakh rupees from you, and I was supposed to pay interest and principal repay. I was supposed to repay it back to you. But because of the lockdown, because of the pandemic situation, my business has gone down and I do not have the money to be able to repay your interest and principal back on time. So what should you do? Should you immediately classify me as a non-performing asset, or should you give me some time? Giving some time means exhibiting forbearance. Giving some time means allowing me the time to stand up back on my feet and start repaying you back. Giving me time means that understanding that my business has gone down because of the overall economic scenario, and as the overall economic scenario improves, I will be able to stand up back on my feet and I'll start repaying you your money, right? That is the meaning of exhibiting forbearance. Exhibiting forbearance simply means that you are giving me some time to stand up back on my feet. Now, the entire banking industry is exhibiting this forbearance. Why? Because the Reserve Bank of India has asked banks to give a respite to those who have borrowed money and cannot pay back immediately. Are you getting my point? So this is the meaning of forbearance. Now the problem with forbearance is that it can go a little too far, in the sense कि आपने मेरे को टाइम दिया, you have given me respite, आपने मेरे को रियायत दी, लेकिन वो कितनी देनी चाहिए, कब तक देनी चाहिए, उसके ऊपर there is no scientific law, right? And human decisions can go wrong. During the global financial crisis of 2008, what happened is that again Indian banks exhibited forbearance, that they gave time for borrowers to repay, and many a times it was seen that borrowers were never able to repay the money back, and that led to a huge problem of non-performing asset 7-8 years down the line. What happened during global financial crisis was that you are a bank, you exhibited forbearance towards borrowers like me, we never repaid your money back. You had a problem of non-performing asset, but you did not want to show the problem of non-performing asset to Reserve Bank of India. Probably you were scared that Reserve Bank of India will probably take some kind of strict action against you. So what did you do? You hid your non-performing asset ka problem from the Reserve Bank of India until Raghuram Rajan became the governor of RBI and made everyone open up their books and acknowledge the problem of non-performing assets in the country. Are you getting my point? So regulatory forbearance that was exhibited during global financial crisis eventually led to the problem of non-performing asset, right, in the economy. But does that mean that regulatory forbearance should not be exhibited at all? What is the lesson that we have learned out of global financial crisis, and how can that lesson help us to deal with COVID-19 induced problems? That is the question. सवाल ये है कि yes, currently we are again exhibiting regulatory forbearance on bank loans, right? But it can be a double-edged sword. How can it be a double-edged sword? फायदा तो ये है कि हाँ, you have to give time to those who have borrowed money to repay the money back. There is no denying that. Time तो देना पड़ेगा. But the problem is कितना time देना चाहिए? What is it that we have learned from global financial crisis? Outline the steps that should be taken so that we can ensure that the buildup of non-performing asset is kept to the minimum in the aftermath of COVID-19. Like we discussed earlier, that Reserve Bank of India itself expects that non-performing assets in India will reach 13% by September 2021. Okay, that should be contained at 13%. It should not become 23%. It should not become 20% or 19% or 18%. It should remain contained at 13%. So how can we ensure that NPA buildup remains to the minimum level possible, right? What is it that we have learned from global financial crisis? That is what the question is. And mind you, this entire discussion I've taken from economic survey and nowhere else, and that is why this is very important, because if survey is discussing all these things, your examiner can also ask you all these things. During global financial crisis of 2008, forbearance helped borrowers. You exhibited forbearance towards me and that helped me tide over the crisis. आपने मेरे को टाइम दिया, मैं अपने पैरों पे खड़ा हो पाया, and I was probably able to repay the money back to you, right? That helped me, no doubt about that. However, when forbearance was continued long after the economic recovery, इकोनॉमिक रिकवरी हो चुकी थी 2008 के अंदर भी जो क्राइसिस आया था, 6-8 महीने साल भर के अंदर इकोनॉमिक रिकवरी हो चुकी थी, उस 6-8 महीने साल भर के बाद भी यू केप्ट एग्जिबिटिंग फोरबेरेंस टुवर्ड्स बोरोवर्स, राइट? उसकी वजह से क्या हुआ कि there were unintended detrimental consequences for you. And what was the unintended detrimental consequence for you? That when the overall regulations were relaxed, provisioning requirements were relaxed, banks exploited the forbearance window that RBI created, and banks kept on restructuring the loan of unviable entities. Banks kept on restructuring the loans of even those entities who were never going to repay the money back. Banks misallocated credit. Credit is finite. Credit is precious. क्रेडिट हैज टू बी यूज्ड कंस्ट्रक्टिवली, बिकॉज वो कोई बैंक का पैसा तो है नहीं कि जला दो कुछ भी कर दो, वो लोगों का पैसा है, जनता के पैसे को मिस एलोकेट करा गया, ऐसे ऐसे बोरोवर्स को पैसा दिया गया जो कभी पैसा रिटर्न करने वाले नहीं थे. इस प्रकार का मिस एलोकेशन ऑफ क्रेडिट कैन नॉट हैपन इन अ डेवलपिंग कंट्री लाइक इंडिया. व्हाई? बिकॉज क्रेडिट इज ऑलरेडी फाइनाइट, क्रेडिट का ऑलरेडी क्रंच है और आप क्रेडिट को बर्बाद नहीं कर सकते हो. फाइनली there was an asset quality review which happened, and finally in 14, 15, 15, 16, 17, 18 non-performing assets were acknowledged, and the percentage of non-performing assets kept on increasing. 4%, 5%, 7% went up to 11%. So this AQR that Raghuram Rajan forced upon the banking industry, it brought out all the non-performing assets, right? What is the survey saying? That this prolonged forbearance policy that followed after the global financial crisis, इस prolonged forbearance policy की वजह से आज का हमारा नॉन परफॉर्मिंग एसेट का जो प्रॉब्लम है वो आज हमारे को देखने को मिल रहा है. Therefore, what is the survey saying? Survey is saying that forbearance is important. It is an emergency medicine that should be used strategically at the right point, and the moment economic recovery is exhibited, the moment economic recovery is sensed, we should withdraw this emergency medicine. Otherwise, what will happen is that it will lead to the problem of non-performing asset going ahead. So the idea is that we have to sort of, take the right decisions, but at the same time we have to protect the banking industry also from CBI, CVC and CAG का inquiry, because गलतियां हो सकती है डिसीजन मेकिंग के अंदर, लेकिन इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि जो बोनाफाइड गलतियां हैं उसकी वजह से आप ईमानदार डिसीजन मेकर को जेल में डाल दें. because if you start doing that, that will be the last day decisions are taken, and there will be an absolute policy paralysis, there will be an absolute decision making paralysis, which we observed something at the end of UPA 2 का term, that there was an absolute paralysis in decision making. Survey says that we have to undertake asset quality review at the first instance immediately after the forbearance is withdrawn. So the moment now that banks withdraw forbearance, immediately we have to take an asset quality review and understand where do we stand so far as our NPA ka problem is concerned. And even while we are doing all this, we have to strengthen our legal infrastructure in the form of IBC, that is Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, so that we are in a position to recover as many loans as we can, to strengthen this kind of infrastructure. That is what we need to do. So अगर आपको इस प्रकार का क्वेश्चन पूछा जाता है कि what do you understand by regulatory forbearance, you should be able to answer. अगर आपको पूछा जाता है what is the need of regulatory forbearance, you should be able to answer. अगर आपको पूछा जाता है how to manage regulatory forbearance, तो you should be able to answer that. अगर आपको पूछा जाता है कि ग्लोबल फाइनेंशियल क्राइसिस से क्या लेसन्स लर्न करें हैं सच दैट कि कोविड-19 पैंडेमिक को सही ढंग से हम manage kar sake, you should be able to answer. I hope that you have understood this technically challenging topic very well, and you are going to participate well in our sessions going ahead, right? So Amit Yadav, right, as well as Reena Rani, as well as all those who are associated in this live session, have you all understood all the 6 questions that I have discussed with you, right? Please give me a thumbs up in the comment section. Please share your suggestions, your doubts, your feedbacks. Please prepare well for the descriptive component of the exam, very, very well. That is what I would like to share with you. If there are any doubts, you can ask me now. You can mail your doubts to us on hello@edutap.co.in. You can call us, right? You should buy our courses, because I've told you that as a part of the budget and survey wala discussion, I have presented 6 questions to you. But as a part of our discussion, we have provided a lot more fodder material to you. And I've selected some of the most difficult and challenging topics out of that to discuss with you, so that you have an overall idea of what is going to happen in the material. I hope that this is very, very clear with you. Amit Yadav have explained what is the meaning of forbearance, right? Please आप थोड़ा सा पहले का देख लीजिए, right? And you know, you will be able to understand everything well, right? चलिए, so let us bring this session to an end, right? Thank you very much guys for your participation. All the very best and Jai Hind.